Hello, my friends, and welcome to JBC English Learning Academy. This is a place where discipline feels light, not heavy. When most people hear the word discipline, they think of forcing themselves, waking up early, pushing through, resistance, fighting laziness. And for a short time that works, but very often it ends in stress, burnout, and self-criticism. This series is not about forcing yourself to do more. It's about learning how to show up without fighting yourself. Real discipline is not created by pressure. It's created by clarity, simplicity, and repetition. You don't become disciplined by being hard on yourself. You become disciplined when actions feel obvious, natural, and easy to repeat. In this series, we're going to change how you think about discipline, not as control, but as alignment, not as pain, but as structure that supports you. You don't need more willpower. You don't need stricter rules. You don't need to become a different person. You need a system that works with your energy, not against it. So don't take notes. Don't try to memorize anything. Just listen. Let these ideas settle while you walk, rest, or stay still. Discipline doesn't grow through tension. It grows when actions fit your life naturally. This series is called How to Build Discipline Without Stress. And it's about creating consistency that feels calm, sustainable, and human. Now, let's begin. Part 1. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is something you force when motivation disappears. They imagine pressure, strict rules, and constant self-control. But this version of discipline is fragile. It works for a short time, then collapses under stress. Real discipline is quieter. Discipline without stress begins when you stop fighting yourself. Fighting creates resistance. Resistance drains energy. When energy is low, discipline breaks. So the first step is not doing more. It is removing friction. Look closely at moments when you fail to be disciplined. It is rarely because you are lazy. It is usually because the action feels heavy, unclear, or emotionally uncomfortable. The brain avoids discomfort automatically. This is not weakness. It is biology. Discipline becomes possible when actions feel obvious. Obvious actions do not require negotiation. You don't debate whether to do them. You don't motivate yourself. You just move. This is how habits work. And discipline without stress is built on habit, not willpower. Willpower is limited. Habits are renewable. When discipline relies on willpower, it feels tense. When it relies on habit, it feels calm. The mistake many people make is setting discipline goals that are too large. They want to wake up early every day, study for hours, change everything at once. Big goals create pressure. Pressure creates stress. Stress kills consistency. Discipline grows in small, repeatable actions. If an action is small enough, your brain does not resist it. Resistance is what makes discipline feel painful. When resistance disappears, consistency appears naturally. Another important shift is removing emotional judgment. Many people attach moral value to discipline. If they do the habit, they feel good. If they miss it, they feel bad. This emotional roller coaster creates stress. Discipline without stress is emotionally neutral. You do the action because it fits your life, not because it proves something about you. When discipline stops being about self-worth, it becomes sustainable. Another hidden cause of stress is perfection. Wanting to do things the right way, wanting full sessions, wanting perfect routines. Perfection creates pressure before you even start. Discipline does not require perfection. It requires returning gently after missed days is more important than never missing days. Stress-free. Discipline allows breaks without guilt. Guilt is one of the biggest enemies of discipline. When guilt appears, the brain associates the habit with pain. Pain leads to avoidance. Avoidance breaks discipline. Removing guilt restores momentum. Another key idea is clarity. Discipline feels stressful when you don't know exactly what to do. Vague goals create mental noise. Clear, simple actions reduce stress. I will listen to English for 5 minutes is clearer than I will improve my English. Clear actions feel doable. Doable actions repeat. Another important part of discipline without stress is timing. You don't force discipline when energy is lowest. You align actions with moments that already exist. After waking up, before sleep, during a walk. Alignment reduces effort. Discipline works best when it follows your natural rhythm instead of trying to override it. Another reason discipline feels stressful is constant decision-making. Every decision costs energy. When you decide every day whether to do something, discipline weakens. Habits remove decisions. When the action happens at the same time in the same context, discipline becomes automatic. Another powerful shift is redefining success. Success is not intensity. Success is continuity. Doing a small action many times beats doing a big action rarely. Discipline without stress measures success by return, not performance. Another important element is compassion. Compassion does not mean lowering standards forever. It means respecting your current capacity. Capacity changes daily. Discipline adapts. Rigid discipline breaks. Flexible discipline lasts. Discipline also becomes lighter when you stop stacking too many habits at once. Focus on one discipline at a time. One anchor habit. Let it settle. Trying to discipline everything creates overload. Another key insight is that discipline grows through identity, not punishment. When you see yourself as someone who shows up calmly, you act accordingly. Identity shapes behavior more than rules. Discipline without stress is not about becoming strict. It is about becoming consistent. When discipline feels calm, you don't fear starting. You don't fear missing. You simply continue. In JBC English Learning Academy, discipline is not a battle. It is a rhythm. In the next part, we will talk about how to design stress-free discipline systems, how to remove pressure from routines, and how to stay consistent even on low-energy days. For now, remember this. Discipline does not need force. It needs clarity, simplicity, and kindness. Part 2. Discipline becomes stressful when it is built on rules instead of systems. Rules demand obedience. Systems invite cooperation. When you rely on rules, you are constantly checking yourself. Did I do it right? Did I fail today? This monitoring creates tension. Systems remove that tension by making the action the natural next step. A stress-free, disciplined system answers one simple question. What is the smallest action that keeps the habit alive? When you know this, discipline stops feeling heavy. Most people design discipline systems for their best version. High energy, free time, strong motivation. But discipline must survive your lowest version. Tired days, busy days, emotionally flat days. If the system only works on good days, it will collapse. This is why minimum standards matter more than maximum goals. The minimum is your discipline safety net. 5 minutes, 1 page, 1 short action. When the minimum is respected, discipline survives. Discipline without stress is not about doing more. It is about never dropping to zero. Zero breaks momentum. Small keeps it alive. Another important element is removing the idea of catching up. When people miss days, they try to compensate by doing more later. This creates pressure and turns discipline into punishment. Stress appears and the habit becomes associated with pain. Stress-free discipline never punishes breaks. It simply resumes. Resuming calmly is discipline. Another cause of stress is rigid scheduling. When discipline is tied to exact times, life disruptions break it. Missed schedules create guilt. Guilt weakens discipline. Instead of fixed times, use flexible windows. Morning, afternoon, evening. When the window exists, the habit fits somewhere. Flexibility protects consistency. Another powerful system is environment. First, discipline. Instead of relying on motivation, you shape your environment to make the disciplined action easy. Phone notifications off. English podcast ready. Notebook open. Shoes by the door. When the environment invites action, discipline feels effortless. Effortless actions repeat. Another stress trigger is complexity. Too many steps, too many tools, too many choices. Complexity increases friction. Friction creates resistance. Simplify the system until it feels almost boring. Boring systems last. Another key idea is separating discipline from mood. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel inspired. Discipline without stress allows action without emotional agreement. You act first. Feeling follows. This is not forcing. This is neutrality. Another important shift is ending actions early. Most people stop when they are exhausted. This teaches avoidance. Ending while you still feel okay teaches safety. Safety attracts repetition. Discipline grows when the brain feels safe repeating the action. Another mistake is trying to discipline multiple areas at once. Discipline spreads naturally from one stable habit. Build one calm habit, let it settle, then add another. Trying to discipline everything creates stress overload. Another important idea is identity reinforcement. After completing the habit, don't celebrate intensity. Acknowledge consistency. I showed up. This reinforces the identity of someone who is disciplined calmly. Identity-based discipline is stable. Another stress-free practice is removing comparison. Comparing discipline levels with others creates unnecessary pressure. Everyone's capacity is different. Discipline must fit your life, not someone else's routine. Another key element is compassion during low performance days. Discipline without stress accepts fluctuation. Some days are lighter, some days are deeper. The system holds both. Holding space for fluctuation prevents burnout. Another powerful idea is trusting accumulation. Small actions accumulate quietly. You don't need to see results daily. Trust reduces stress. Stress-free discipline is patient. Another shift is removing language like I must and replacing it with this is what I do. Language shapes behavior. Must creates resistance. This is what I do creates identity. Another cause of stress is external validation. Waiting for praise or visible results. Discipline without stress is internally anchored. You show up because it aligns with you. Alignment feels calm. Another important aspect is recovery after disruption. Travel, illness, life changes. Discipline without stress adapts. It shrinks. It pauses lightly. It returns gently. Gentle return is discipline. In JBC English Learning Academy, discipline is not strict control. It is quiet consistency supported by smart systems. In the next part, we will talk about how discipline becomes automatic over time, how habits replace effort, and how stress disappears as actions become part of your identity. For now, remember this. Discipline survives when systems support you, and systems work best when they are simple, flexible, and kind. Part 3. Over time, something important begins to happen. Discipline stops feeling like something you initiate and starts feeling like something that runs on its own. This is the moment when effort slowly steps aside and habit takes control. Stress disappears not because life becomes easier, but because your system becomes smarter. At the beginning, discipline feels conscious. You remind yourself. You push a little. You negotiate. This stage is normal, but it is temporary. The goal is not to stay here. The goal is to repeat the action enough times that the brain no longer treats it as a decision. The brain loves efficiency. When it sees the same action repeated in the same context, it automates it. Automation is the opposite of stress. This is why discipline becomes easier with time, not harder. Another important shift is how discipline moves from the emotional brain to the habit brain. At first, emotions play a big role. You feel motivated or unmotivated, inspired or tired. But habits don't live in emotion. They live in routine. When an action becomes routine, emotions stop controlling it. This is where many people get confused. They wait to feel motivated to act. But motivation is unreliable. Discipline without stress ignores motivation and follows structure. Structure is calming. Chaos is stressful. Another key idea is predictability. When the brain can predict what comes next, it relaxes. Predictable actions feel safe. Safe actions repeat. This is why doing the same small habit in the same situation every day is powerful. The situation becomes the trigger. The trigger activates the habit. No decision is needed. This loop is automatic. Discipline. Another reason stress disappears is that you stop measuring effort. You don't ask yourself if it was enough today. You simply notice that you showed up. Showing up becomes the win. Wins that are easy to achieve repeat easily. Another important shift is that discipline stops being visible. You don't feel proud every day. You don't feel excited. You just do the thing. This invisibility is a sign of success. Habits that feel impressive are fragile. Habits that feel normal are strong. Another powerful aspect of stress-free discipline is reduced self-talk. You stop talking yourself into action. You stop arguing with yourself. Less internal dialogue means less stress. Silence inside the mind is a sign that habit has taken over. Another reason discipline becomes automatic is that the brain starts associating the action with relief instead of effort. You finish the habit and feel settled, calm, grounded. That feeling becomes a reward. The brain repeats what feels relieving. This is why ending sessions before exhaustion matters. You teach your brain that discipline is safe. Another important idea is that automatic discipline survives chaos better than forced discipline. On chaotic days, you may still do the smallest version of the habit without thinking. This keeps continuity alive. Continuity protects identity. Another sign that discipline is becoming automatic is reduced resistance. You no longer feel the urge to avoid the action. It doesn't feel optional. Not because you force yourself, but because it's part of your rhythm. Rhythm replaces willpower. Another mistake people make is trying to accelerate this process. They add pressure to lock in discipline faster. But pressure delays automation. Automation requires calm repetition. Let the habit settle at its own pace. Another important shift is trust. Trust that you don't need to control the process. Control creates stress. Repetition creates stability. Stability creates discipline. Another benefit of automatic discipline is emotional resilience. When discipline is habit-based, bad moods don't derail it. You don't need to feel good to show up. You just show up. This removes guilt, self-criticism, and emotional drama from discipline. Another sign of progress is when missing one day no longer scares you. You know you'll return. Fear disappears because the habit is strong. Strong habits are forgiving. Another important idea is that discipline becomes part of identity quietly. You don't say, "I'm disciplined." You act like someone who shows up. Identity follows behavior. Behavior repeated calmly reshapes who you are. Another key aspect is simplicity. Automatic discipline thrives on simplicity. The fewer steps, the fewer decisions, the faster automation happens. Complex systems resist automation. Another reason stress disappears is that you stop chasing discipline. You stop trying to be disciplined. You simply live in a way that includes the habit. Discipline becomes a side effect of your environment and routine. In JBC English Learning Academy, this is the goal. Discipline that does not feel like discipline. Discipline that feels like JBC English. In the next part, we will talk about protecting stress-free discipline long-term, how to adapt during difficult seasons, and how to prevent stress from creeping back in. For now, remember this. Discipline becomes effortless when habit takes over, and habits grow fastest in calm. predictable environments. Part 4. Once discipline starts running, automatically, the focus shifts from building it to protecting it. Not protecting it with control or pressure, but with awareness and flexibility. Stress usually returns not because discipline disappears, but because life changes and the system doesn't adapt. Discipline without stress survives change. Many people lose discipline during busy seasons, emotional periods, or unexpected disruptions. They assume discipline failed. In reality, the system was too rigid. Rigid systems break. Flexible systems bend and continue. The first protection is accepting seasons. There are seasons of high energy and seasons of low energy. Trying to perform at the same level every day creates pressure. Pressure reintroduces stress. Stress-free discipline allows fluctuation. Some days you do the full version of the habit. Some days you do the minimum. Both count. The habit stays alive because continuity remains. Another important protection is shrinking before breaking. When life becomes intense, don't quit the habit. Shrink it. Reduce duration. Reduce intensity. Keep the signal. Signals matter more than volume. A 2-minute action still tells your brain, this is part of my life. That signal preserves identity. Another reason stress returns is self-criticism after missed days. Self-criticism creates emotional weight. Emotional weight makes returning harder. Discipline without stress removes punishment completely. Missing days is not a moral failure. It is information. It tells you something needs adjustment. When you respond with curiosity instead of judgment, discipline stays light. Another protective idea is redefining consistency. Consistency does not mean never missing. It means always returning. This definition removes pressure and keeps momentum. Return is discipline. Another source of stress is comparison. Seeing other people's routines, productivity, or discipline creates unnecessary pressure. Your system must fit your life, not someone else's highlight reel. Discipline that compares itself breaks under pressure. Another important protection is keeping discipline emotionally neutral. If discipline becomes tied to self-worth, pride, or fear, stress creeps back in. Neutral actions repeat best. You don't celebrate excessively. You don't punish yourself. You simply continue. Another key element is environment maintenance. Over time, environments change, apps change, schedules shift. When the environment stops supporting the habit, discipline feels harder. Periodically simplify. Again, reduce steps. Make the habit easy to access. Ease protects discipline. Another reason stress returns is trying to optimize discipline too much. Optimization adds complexity. Complexity increases friction. Friction creates resistance. Discipline does not need constant improvement. It needs stability. Another protective habit is ending sessions gently. Stopping before exhaustion keeps the brain feeling safe. Safe habits repeat. Ending in exhaustion teaches avoidance. Another powerful idea is leaving space. Discipline without stress does not fill every moment. It allows breathing room. Overloading the schedule makes discipline feel oppressive. Space keeps discipline sustainable. Another important protection is trust in recovery. If discipline weakens temporarily, trust that it can be restored gently. Panic leads to overcorrection. Overcorrection creates stress. Gentle correction restores rhythm. Another sign of stress-free discipline is resilience. You don't feel like everything is lost. After a disruption, you know how to return calmly. That knowledge is discipline, maturity. Another aspect is listening to internal signals. When resistance increases, don't push harder, adjust. Resistance is feedback, not failure. Discipline improves when feedback is respected. Another powerful protection is keeping the why simple, not grand. Motivation. Simple alignment. This supports me. Alignment feels calm. Grand reasons create pressure. Another subtle shift is that discipline becomes background. You don't talk about it much. You don't think about it much. It just happens. Background habits last longest. In JBC English Learning Academy, discipline is protected by gentleness, adaptability, and trust in small actions. In the final part, we will bring everything together and talk about how discipline becomes part of identity, how stress stays away long-term, and how calm consistency reshapes your life. For now, remember this: discipline lasts when it adapts, and stress disappears when flexibility replaces force. At the deepest level, discipline without stress is not something you practice. It is something you become. When discipline reaches this stage, it no longer feels like effort, control, or resistance. It feels like alignment. Your actions match who you are and how you live. This is where identity takes over. At the beginning, discipline feels external. A rule, a plan, a goal. Over time, through repeated calm actions, discipline moves inward. It becomes part of your self-image. You don't say, "I must be disciplined." You simply act like someone who shows up. This shift removes stress completely. Identity-based discipline does not rely on willpower. It relies on self-consistency. You act in ways that feel natural to you. Acting against identity creates tension. Acting in alignment feels calm. This is why discipline built through pressure never lasts. It fights identity. Discipline built through repetition reshapes identity. Another important realization is that stress comes from conflict. Conflict between what you think you should do and what you actually want to do. Discipline without stress removes this conflict by designing actions that fit your life. When actions fit, resistance disappears. Another deep change is that discipline stops being visible. You don't feel heroic for being disciplined. You don't feel proud every time. You don't feel guilty when you miss. You simply continue. This emotional neutrality is the final stage. Neutral habits are the strongest habits. Another sign that discipline has matured is that it survives emotional states. You show up when you're tired, when you're bored, when you're not in the mood, not because you force yourself, but because the action feels normal. Normal actions don't require debate. Another important shift is trusting yourself. You trust that you will return after breaks. You trust that you don't need strict control. Trust reduces anxiety. Anxiety is the root of stress. When trust is present, discipline feels light. Another aspect is letting go of timelines. Discipline without stress is not racing toward an outcome. It is living in a process. Outcomes arrive naturally as a side effect. Rushing creates pressure. Pressure reintroduces stress. Another realization is that discipline becomes quiet. You don't announce it. You don't optimize it constantly. You don't track every detail. Quiet habits integrate deeper. This quiet integration is what makes discipline last for years. Another important element is compassion. Compassion does not weaken discipline. It strengthens it. Compassion allows return. Return maintains continuity. Harsh discipline breaks under pressure. Kind discipline adapts. Another sign that stress is gone is that discipline no longer feels like self-control. It feels like self-respect. You show up because it supports you, not because you fear consequences. Self-respect is calm. Fear is stressful. Another powerful realization is that discipline does not require sacrifice. It requires design. When systems support you, discipline. JBC English Learning Academy. Design beats force every time. Another final shift is seeing discipline as a relationship, not a task. A relationship with your time, your energy, your goals. Relationships need care, not control. When discipline is treated as a relationship, it stays healthy. As this series ends, remember this core truth. Discipline is not built through pressure. It is built through alignment, small actions, clear systems, gentle returns. When discipline fits your life, stress has no reason to exist. You don't need to become stricter. You need to become calmer. And when calm consistency becomes your normal, discipline takes care of itself.